Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dylbozer's Den. Joined with you as always is me, Baldini, Arkansas's great hope, the bald one, the Dylbozer himself. Today we're going to be digging into the most recent release from Virginia's own Inter Arma with their album New Heaven. Now it's been about 5 years since their last release, which was Sulphur English in 2019. And a lot has happened during that 5 years. We've had 2 new members join the band. We have had bassist Joel Moore, currently of North Carolina death metalers Wretched, joining in on bass, and vocalist Mike Paparo joining, who is currently the newest vocalist of Artificial Brain. Tie-in with Artificial Brain is I got to see Artificial Brain at the early months of 2023, which is Nashville locals Pelagius' first show. But at that show, one of the guitar players from Inter Arma filled in on vocals with Artificial Brain. So a little bit of tie in there. We've got returning members, TJ Childer on drums. We've got guitarist Stephen Dirt Russell. We've got guitarist Trey Dalton, who also adds some keyboards, mellotron, and vocals to the album. We've got some guests on the album, 3 returning collaborators. Meg Mulhern on violin, who has collaborated with the band on prior releases. John Lake playing theremin, and Mike Allred doing synths, stand-up bass, organs, etc., etc. Mike Allred also mixed and mastered this album as well as some of the band's other releases. He owns Dark Art Audio based out of Nashville, Tennessee. He's also worked on the aforementioned Pelagius self-titled EP that was released a handful of weeks ago. And he's worked with Yalcha on their songs
Lament,
Songs of Descent, and he's worked on their Dead Soil releases. The production, the mixing and mastering of this record are stellar. You get to hear every instrument shine on that, and we'll elaborate into that once we dig into the review. Keep in mind, it's been 5 years since the band's most previous release. Been a long time waiting, long time coming. To give a bit of backstory into this band entering my life, I got to see Inter Arma in 2016 opening for American black metal band Woe at the Stone Fox in Nashville, Tennessee, and I kind of shrugged them off as just another doom band. I got to see them yet again on a Paul Bear Gatecreeper Inter Arma tour, and I believe that was in 2017 or maybe 2018. Austin Paulson, I got to see them at Zanzibar in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, shrugged them off, wasn't paying attention, whatever it was. I strike that up as just being young and dumb. Man, I was wrong about this band. Throughout the last handful of years where I've been digging into more music and listening more freely, I just started to hear this band's tracks enter into my kind of daily routine. And I have to find out more about this band. And luckily, thanks to Relapse Records, which is one of the best record labels ever, I got to get all these reissues that the band just put out on their vinyl. So I was really stoked on that. And when I saw the release push of a new record, I was really stoked. First off, you have the stellar artwork done by Louis Palu, hopefully I pronounced your name right, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning documentarian. This isn't just standard artwork. This isn't a commissioned piece. This is an actual piece of photography that is really striking. Blue is my favorite color, so it draws my eyes to it. But it just really kind of draws into the record. You don't really know what to expect with that artwork. It reminds me of the Discordant Axis album we just recently reviewed, where you don't really know what you're getting. And that really excites me a lot with that. So let's dig into the meat and potatoes of the record. Opening up, you have the title track, New Heaven. And immediately it opens up with some discordant riffing, just atonal sounding stuff. Makes me think of Calculating Infinity era Dillinger Escape Plan. There's Portal all over this track, at least to my ear. Very dissonant sounding black metal, Blood Nord, Deathspell Omega, that type of thing. That seems to be a common thread in a lot of bands in the last handful of years, is you get a lot more of that influence in there. And dissonance can be terrible at certain points, but when bands do it well, they just, you can't beat it. It just adds an atmosphere and an air of dread and honestly anxiety to it that you don't necessarily get right out the gate. I'm noticing Joel Moore, who joined on bass, just cutting through the mix. And that's, a big part of him picking the right things to play, but also the mixing and mastering of this record. There's been a huge upsurge of bands actually looking at bass guitar and going, oh, wow, it's not this thing we have the Barry and Hyde. It's not the less skilled member of the band, which is always the trope. Thanks, Glenn Fricker. But you get him cutting through the mix. He knows what to do, and he's added a lot to the rest of the record. Let's go on to the next track, which is Violet Seizures. This makes me think of Cephalic Carnage, the Misled by Certainty kind of era, the more technical era, Xenosapien, those albums. Definitely has a lot of post-punk feel to it as well. I spoke with one of my best friends back from Arkansas, and he mentioned that there's a bit of a krautrock influence here. At least he got it. I'm not very familiar with the krautrock subgenre, so anybody that's listening to this, shoot me some recommendations. I'd love to dig into that a little bit and give it a shot. Anything that influences a band like this or a song like this on an album like this, I would love to dig in and see what's out there. Another point of this track is that there's a huge sense of melody under all the droning and pounding, which just is so creative to me that you get to hear this built-in melody in all this. You know, one big thing I noticed on this album is I have listened to it many, many times. And what I've noticed is I hear something different every single time I listen to it, which is so nice to hear. I love being able to listen to album months, years, decades later and hear shit I never heard before. Let's go into the third track, which is Desolation's Harp. What's so great about the first three tracks on this album is they all three sound like different tracks, yet they're so cohesive. And that's going through the rest of the record as well. There's something to be said about a band that can record songs that sound completely different, but still sound like them. And Inter Arma does that. The only comparison I could give to that would be, you know, obviously they did a covers record, but Metallica also did a covers record called Garage Days. Garber Days, Garage Days. But what you get is a band that sounds like themselves doing these different types of tracks. I mean, I'm sure if this band did a fucking freeform jazz track, it would sound like Inter Arma. Needless to say, another great track. Huge classic rock guitar harmonies at the peak of the track that fade out into the end of it, which sets you up for the next track, which is Endless Gray, which is a standout track on the album. Starts out with huge classic rock guitars, makes me think of something like Molly Hatchet, 38 Special, Thin Lizzy, you know, Leonard Skinner, you name it. I hate to like use the Southern trope, but it's there, you know, it's kind of ingrained in us when we grow up and we listen to all those tracks. This makes me think of just going back to the old Practice Space. I can smell the bong resin. I can smell and hear the tubes warming up. Sitting in my buddy's old Nissan pickup truck and just hearing Jailbreak come on at full volume, it makes me think of everything like that. You also get this massive bass solo walking bass line in the middle of the song that leads out. That's like Orion from Master of Puppets. Massive guitar layers everywhere. I would love to know the process of mixing and mastering this record with all of these layers into it. Mikey did a great job on this. And that ends us on side A with a slam dunk of a track. And then we kick into side B, which I think in all of our vernacular, we always refer to side B or B-sides as like the less than stellar portion of a record, when in reality, it's just the next side of the album. So we kick that off with Gardens in the Dark. And this is the first instance of the band using these big baritone, cleaner vocals. It makes me think of Peter Steele come Nick Cave. Definitely something from Nick Cave's catalog off of The Boatman's Call. Peter Steele, I get more of like a World Coming Down or even a Dead Again kind of vibe here. It's less of the goth side of it and more of just the questioning side of it. This track is so cool. It's got these deep synth swirls all over it. It's got a muted bass on it, which is really cool. The distortion's dialed back a little bit. Maybe we're playing with dynamics a bit. It's a huge anthemic track to begin the B-side of this record. Then we go on to what is probably my favorite track on the record as a whole, The Children the Bombs Overlooked. And immediately it sounds like Neurosis. Think Times of Grace through Silver and Blood era. Just massive guitars, massive drums. The drums on this track are stellar. TJ Childers does a great job of this, just pounding and beating the shit and intensely hitting his drums. I don't know where the stamina comes from. It sounds like he is literally just punching through the drums the entire time on this. And the speed and precision of how he's hitting the feels and the grooves and everything on here. It is such a Neurosis-esque track. I just can't stand it sometimes that it's so good. This track kind of goes in multiple different directions too, like just to tease you a little bit. It'll go, you know, in one direction, then another, then it reels it back in almost like it's teasing you. And I would love to hear where the band can go further in those directions later on. Who knows? This band's pretty prone to release some epic sounding stuff, some epic length stuff. I'd love to hear this band go in multiple directions on here. Maybe I'm full of my own shit. Maybe I'm not hearing that. Maybe other people don't, but I'm definitely hearing it. But I just can't get away from the fact that the drums are so hard and pounding on this track. it builds and builds and builds until you get to about the last minute of the song, and it goes into a full-on black metal escapade of sorts. Again, there's black metal kind of vocal stylings all over the record, but this part in particular just really sticks out. We go on to Concrete Cliffs, which to me is another standout track on the album. It's one of the singles I heard. It's got these great soaring kind of vocal choruses, if you could say that. I know the word chorus and like death metal, doom adjacent music's kind of odd, but this is definitely the track I want to hear live off of this album. I want to hear the whole thing, but this is the one in particular I have to hear. If I go to see the band again and they don't play anything else from this album other than this track, I would still be so stoked. But if you get a chance to see Inter Arma on this album cycle, please do. If they come to Louisville or Nashville, I'm there. But again, this track is just so good. It was a great leadoff track for the album. I can't say anything better about this track. And then we dig right into the very last track, which it ends the B-side, it ends the whole record. It's another track where you get those great Nick Cave, Peter Steele-esque vocals. And this is more of a murder ballad. This is Forest Service Road Blues. Makes me immediately think of anti-era Tom Waits, something off Mule Variations or Alice or Blood Money. What a great track. It sounds like a man that's got nothing else to lose, that's desperate, that is scratching and clawing and is burying himself in whatever desperation and pain that he's got. What a great fucking track. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the 2003 Punisher film, the one with Kevin Nash playing a Russian, but there's an acoustic track in there that kind of plays out as Frank Castle's getting out of prison. What you hear is a bit of a murder ballad. If that movie was made in 2024 or possibly 2025, this would have to be the track that would play during that point. This is that track. I can't say enough great things about this album. I know I've touted a handful of records I've reviewed this year as being on my end of the year list, and this one is no different. Matter of fact, this could very well be at the top of my list. It's going to be hard to beat the excitement I have for this record. It's going to be hard to beat how much I've enjoyed this record. This not only could be one of the best albums, if not the best album of 2024, this could be one of the best metal records of the last 5 years. It's absolutely fantastic. Any chance you get to see Inter Arma, go do it. New Heaven, fucking listen to it.